All right, y'all. Welcome to our second to last countdown to election week with Progress Texas before Election Day. Today we have Diana Gomez, Glenn Smith, and Wesley Story. And I think we're all just excited to see what happens tomorrow. But before tomorrow, we had this weekend. And for those of you who are kind of into the political world, there's a lot of activity. So Glenn, Diana, Wesley, what did y'all get up to during the weekend? And as Progress Texas, what did we do? Glenn, do you want to go start?
Well, certainly. I spent a lot of the hours over the weekend monitoring the situation in Harris County with drive-through voting on the legal side and even the practical side as we get closer to Election Day tomorrow. That's been an extraordinarily successful process. A lot of people took advantage of it. I hope it gets used into the future. So I was focused on that and watching all the legal planning, et cetera, go into it. The hearing's underway right now about whether those ballots, 127,000 of them, will be counted. It's happening in a federal court, and keep your fingers crossed. But I think the Harris County and Democrats are going to win that argument.
I hope so. Diana, how about yourself?
Yeah, I was just catching up on all the slacks of comms folks across Texas, trying to catch up on some notes and messaging, and also catching up on the news of the incredible voter turnout and numbers. So just compiling all of that into some notes that I know Wesley and I have been working on defending democracy stuff here at Progress Texas that we're really excited about, and just reading up to prep for the big day tomorrow, for this big week.
Sorry, and Wesley, what about you?
Yeah, so I think as you're kind of seeing a pattern here, I think anyone who's in this work can tell you this close to an election, we don't really get much of a weekend anymore because there's just too much stuff going on. So I was also, like Diana said, I was trying to keep up with the news and all the stuff that's happening in Texas, keep up with all the Slack messages and emails I was getting, but then also prepping for Election Day and election night specifically. So I've been drafting quite a few press releases based off of how the results go on election night, and really just prepping for, I mean, it's hard to know what's going to happen. We know that this whole entire year, we've heard the word unprecedented a lot this year, and it's true. This entire year has been unprecedented, so we can only expect that election night is going to be the same. So really just like prepping what we can prep ahead of Election Day.
Yeah, and over this weekend, I went and did literature dropping for a lot of candidates. And one really cool thing I found is that for every progressive candidate I went out for, there was tons of voters like, you know what? I appreciate the lit, but I already voted for Mike, or I already voted for Pooja. And that's just like really good to see going into it, because the way they pick these voters is like, have they voted or not? In addition, there was two themes that I saw with like all the folks, in real life, on social media, that I'm sure you all felt over the weekend. One, like the really big one is, what can I do? I've voted, and now Election Day is in 2 days. What are my options right now as a voter to like help turn out even more voters? Diana, what is something that people could do to like make sure that we get this done?
Yeah, and so I think just to start off, it's your vote is important, but collectively we need to. It's not a blue trickle that what's going to happen this week. It's a blue wave. So it's all of us coming together and making this wave happen. So I think a big thing is, after you voted, check on everyone who is able to vote, who is registered to vote, because we've seen record numbers of folks who have voted already and a record number of folks that are registered to vote. But just because someone's registered doesn't mean that they're going to vote. And a lot of friends and family might be registered, but they might not have the tools or the information to be able to go out and vote. And so to be someone who checks up on them, who pokes a little bit, and make sure, hey, have you voted? Do you have a voting? What's your voting plan? If not, like, let's work together on making that happen. And one great tool to plug in for folks to be able to have a voting plan, to know who to vote for, is the Progress Texas Voter Guide that we've compiled.
Yeah. So you're talking about tools, right? Glenn, if you're going to the polls, what should you have with you to make sure that you can get in, be safe and healthy, get your vote, and then get home?
That's pretty easy, really. Be sure to have your necessary identification with your picture on it and your voter registration card. You don't need both, but it's good to have both. During the pandemic voting, always take your mask. You want to take your own hand sanitizer. You might take a pen if you may have to sign an affidavit or something for a variety of reasons, like people may return a mail ballot they received and vote in person, and they'll have to be signing a form if they want to do that. So put a pen in your pocket. Go early. Don't be daunted by the lines. If you're in line, whenever you got in line, you get to vote. Look at lines as a good thing. I know people don't often like to wait in lines, but what lines mean is that democracy is working. So be patient and hang with it.
Yeah, if I could add, what I should have taken on when I went is a book, because you can only look at Reddit for so long before you kind of get like bored of the scrolling. So a book, maybe definitely some water in case it's getting hot outside, and if you have one, a foldable beach chair. I saw a few voters who had that in line. And I was like, man, I've been standing for 2 hours. You've been sitting for 2 hours. That's brilliant. In addition to what else can I do, we also heard, we had the Trump bus thing happen with Biden's bus. In New Jersey, New York, we saw Trump voters kind of like clogging the highways. Wesley, some folks were like, what is it going to look like on election day? If voters go to the polls and face obstacles, what can they do? What should they do?
Yeah, so I think that's really important, Satvik, is to just stay vigilant on election day. One of the things we're encouraging folks to do is if you have any issues voting or if you witness any problems, but they're not necessarily affecting you, to call 866-OUR-VOTE. That's the voter protection hotline. And there are volunteer lawyers on the other end of the line who can help walk you through those things. But to a quick point that kind of Glenn was making, and Diana talked about a lot too, is just this voter enthusiasm that we're seeing and like the lines that might be occurring on election day. I would really encourage folks to make, if you are voting on election day or if you have friends who are going to vote, make it a celebration. This is about participating in democracy. I know there are a lot of folks, we covered this over the weekend, but there are mariachis at the polls down in South Texas who are playing to try to encourage people to get out and vote, and really just making it part of your this is how election day should be really every 4 years, every 2 years when we have an election. It should be part of a celebration. And I think that that's something that's so important, is that we're participating in the democratic process and we're encouraging others to do the same. And the best way to do that is to find ways to make it a more enthusiastic, optimistic kind of outlook on what's happening in our state. And that really encourages turnout. I was just looking at the most recent Texas Tribune coverage of the turnout, and I think we're about at 60% of registered voters have turned out to vote so far, which is amazing. But that also means that 40% of registered voters haven't voted yet in Texas. So there's a huge population of people who we can still get out to vote. And the best way to do that is to encourage them and really just reach out to everyone and make sure they voted.
We had a question from YouTube. I'm not sure who might be the best to answer this. Wes Morrison's asking, do we see an uptick in Democratic voters in red counties?
Yes, that's happening. Because many of those counties that we considered red have turned purple. Some of it this time is people changing their minds. A lot of it is new people moving into those areas, like Collin County outside of Dallas. And Fort Bend County has already sort of turned blue outside of Houston. So yes, and they, if you look at their numbers, they are voting in really high numbers in those counties. So it's a good sign for Democrats and progressives.
It's a great sign. One other thing, which I'm sure we've all heard a lot about, and this ties back to why this show is called Countdown to Election Week, not Countdown to Election Day, is that there's a lot of questions around like, will we know the answer to who's won on election night? And to his discredit, the president, Donald Trump, has been saying we need to know on November 3rd. But Diana, earlier you were saying that that's not really the case. Do you mind talking a little bit about what we should really expect?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a lot of folks, it's really important to talk more in terms of election week, because what a lot of folks don't know, and it's really important to know yourselves and to also let friends and family know as well, is that we might not know the exact result of the presidential election. We might know the results of some local elections, but we might not know the final result of the presidential election on election night, on that night. But we will find out. It just might take a little bit of time, but this is worth the wait. One of the reasons is that we had a ton of mail-in ballots this year. And while there are a lot of states that have already counted them. There are a lot of other states in the US that wait to count those ballots until after the polls close on election night. And so that might be super late at night, and then they'll start counting those. So it'll be worth the wait. Just like Glenn was mentioning, long lines are a good sign. It means a lot of people are participating and waiting for the results. It's a good sign. It means democracy is working. All those votes, every vote counts. So every single one of those votes should be counted. And so it's nothing, for alarm. It's just knowing that to prepare ourselves that we might not know that night. It'll take some time, and that is completely okay. What we want to make sure, first of all, is that we have an accurate count.
Yeah. And Glenn, I think you might be the only one who's worked on presidential campaign in the past. What does it really look like? Like, CNN says we were projecting this, but how does that actually work?
Well, it looks as daunting as it is on the inside, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of hard work. One thing about it is, from looking from the outside, you might think it's kind of sexy and fun and creative, but the real work in the campaign is just hard work and elbow grease and getting after it day after day after day. I did want to point out that it's not the least bit unusual for it not to end on election night. I think that we've not known the presidential winner after midnight on election day in 1960, 1968, 1976, 2000, 2004, and 2016. So new voters and people new to the process need to know it's not the least bit unusual to have a bit of a delay in finding out the winner.
Yeah, and really we should underscore that, because there's an opportunity for people to say that it should be done, but historically it's never been the case. And so if we don't find out who's won until the election week is over, that's totally normal, and we shouldn't let anyone tell us otherwise. So this has been really insightful. I would love for Glenn, Wesley, and Diana, if you want to leave one last message for voters going into election day, where their heads should be at, what they can do, again, just to underscore, so that we can have like the best election day possible, and knock on wood, maybe even flip the state. Glenn, do you want to start off?
I just remind people how powerful their voice is and how powerful their vote is. It's really easy to think you're just one out of multiple millions of people, so you don't make that much difference. But democracy depends on the single voice, on the single vote, and on those single votes adding up. Know that you're empowered. You have the power. Go exercise it. Go and vote.
Wesley, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I would just say our state is at a tipping point. And as Diana mentioned earlier, every single vote makes a difference. We are neck and neck in so many races. And so one vote really can mean all the difference. And so I would just say we need to make sure every ballot's counted. We need to make sure that folks are getting out to vote. But just know, and also we've broke a record already. So every time someone new casts their ballot, we're setting a new record for voter turnout. So just think about that when you're heading out to vote. Like, you're helping set a new record whenever you cast your ballot.
Yeah, I would say, just to what Wesley was saying earlier about making this a celebration and about how we've already broken records. What a great opportunity would be to look back in time and say that you and your family and your friends were a part of this wave, a part of breaking these records. So it's, again, please feel free to check in on your friends and family, and make sure to bug them if there's anything you're thinking about. What else can I do? How else can I help? Is to push other folks to keep breaking records. We were number one in the U.S. Texas #1. Let's keep being number one. Love Texas, born and raised, and we have to really represent our state and be prepared for all of the other amazing wins that we're going to see. Not just nationally, but also statewide and then local races.
I am feeling so energized for tomorrow. If you're someone who has not voted yet, or you want to help your friends vote, we've got some really, really great resources online. Head over to progresstexas.org. You can find our voter guide. There's one that's for the entire state, but we also have them drilled down by smaller areas like the Dallas area, Houston area. In that, you'll find not only who you should vote for at the top of the ballot, but also at the bottom of the ballot, because we need to make sure that we vote from the very top to the very bottom. Once you figure out who you're going to vote for, to build your vote plan or to help your friends build their vote plan, head over to govotetexas.org. You'll find your polling place, what IDs you need to bring, top to bottom, everything you need to make the perfect vote plan to get and vote. Diana, Glenn, Wesley, thank you so much for all of your insight. Everyone watching, we'll see you tomorrow at 12. Have a great day. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.